The kitchen was quiet, except for the slow hum of the refrigerator. A half-filled glass of milk glowed faintly on the table where sunlight slipped through lace curtains. Milo, the silver kitten, padded across the wooden floor, his paws soundless against the planks. He leapt onto the chair, peering curiously at the shimmering glass. For a moment his reflection shimmered back, perfectly matched, until it blinked after he did. Milo froze. The reflection tilted its head the wrong way, its green eyes narrowing in confusion that wasn't his. He looked back, meowed softly. The reflection's mouth didn't move. Instead, it smiled. The tiny feline shuddered, tail puffing, but fascination held him still. Was it the light? The glass? The milk? A pulse of faint static crackled through the air, as if the room itself was thinking. Milo leaned closer. The reflection tilted closer still. Then it whispered from the other side of the glass. "Thirsty?" The glass stood still, but Milo couldn't move. The whisper still echoed in his head, faint, like a voice coming from underwater. Clara turned at the sound of his tiny hiss, smiling absently before returning to her work. Milo pawed at the rim again, watching the white surface tremble. Nothing, only silence. He lowered his head to drink, eyes darting between his tongue and the glass's reflection. The mirrored kitten didn't drink. It watched. When Milo's tongue touched the milk, the reflection's mouth parted, and a single drop of crimson rippled through the reflected glass, tinting it pink. Milo jerked back, staring in disbelief. Behind him, Clara's screen flickered, her reflection in it showing no face at all. Clara laughed softly at something on her screen, her voice echoing down the hall. Milo blinked and looked toward her, but her reflection in the glass remained still, smiling faintly without moving her lips. He crept backward, ears pressed low. His tail twitched once, twice. Then behind him, a gentle clink, the sound of another glass being placed on the table. Milo turned slowly. Only one stood there. The reflected world, however, now showed two. A sudden buzz cracked through the silence, Clara's phone vibrating across the table. Milo startled, leaping backward. The reflection kitten didn't move. Instead, it lifted its head as though listening. A faint, rhythmic tapping came from within the glass, matching the phone's vibration. Clara reached over without looking, silencing it. Her hand brushed near the glass and Milo saw it. For one heartbeat, her reflection wasn't hers. It was the kitten's. The hum returned, deeper this time. Milo crouched low, fur standing up along his back. The reflection's grin widened until it nearly reached the edge of the glass. Then, as quickly as it began, everything stopped. The air was still. The light softened. The milk turned opaque, hiding both reflections. Clara glanced up at last, brow furrowing. "Milo?" she whispered. He didn't answer. His eyes locked on the faint outline of another paw print pressed from inside the glass. Milo could not stay away. By midday, the kitchen shimmered with a stillness that felt watchful. Clara had gone outside to take a call, leaving him alone with the glass. He padded across the counter, pupils wide with intent. The milk inside was calm again, its white surface unbroken, as if it remembered nothing. He placed a paw against the glass. No reaction. Then he tapped once. A faint echo answered from within. Another tap, another delayed reply. Milo tilted his head, testing. 2 quick taps, a pause. The reflection answered differently. 3 slow beats, deliberate. The kitten's breath quickened. He was sure of it now. Whatever waited behind that shining surface was thinking too. That night, Clara left the kitchen light on. She said it comforted him that cats dislike the dark. But Milo sat beneath the faint glow, watching the glass. Its milk had thinned to a silvery sheen, reflecting his small shape like moonlight. He raised one paw, held it perfectly still. The reflection twitched. Not delayed now, early. Milo froze. Then, softly, The reflected kitten stepped back and sat down, tail wrapping neatly around its paws, waiting. The air seemed to hum with some invisible signal between them. Milo lowered his paw. The reflection nodded. It was playing with him. By morning, Clara noticed the paw prints. Tiny, wet shapes on the counter that didn't match the floor below. She frowned, wiping them away, but they reappeared minutes later, slightly shifted, as if someone smaller had tried to walk like Milo but didn't know how. The kitten sat at her feet, watching, tail curled politely. When she bent to scratch his head, he purred. Yet his reflection in the fridge door stayed motionless, eyes wide and unblinking. Clara's hand froze midair, her breath catching. The reflection smiled at her, slow and deliberate. That afternoon, Clara set up a camera. She laughed at herself, saying it was silly, but the tension in her voice betrayed her. The lens faced the glass of milk while Milo sat beside it. Together, they waited. Minutes passed. Then the glass trembled. A ripple disturbed the milk's surface. The reflection of Milo lifted its paw and waved. Clara gasped, stepping back. Milo blinked, uncertain whether to fear or follow. Then, to her horror, the reflection turned its gaze from the kitten and looked directly into the camera. Clara replayed the footage, heart pounding. The reflection's movements were real, recorded, undeniable. But when she paused the video, something even stranger happened. Milo's reflection in the screen blinked, though the real kitten didn't. She whispered his name. The reflection turned toward her voice. From within the paused image, Milo tilted his head, mirroring her fear. Then the screen flickered once, twice, and both reflections, the one in the glass and the one in the recording, smiled together, perfectly in sync. Night had settled over the house like a velvet curtain. Milo crouched on the counter, eyes fixed on the glass. The milk shimmered unnaturally under the kitchen lamp, reflecting him perfectly. Except the reflection moved first. He swiped a paw, and the mirrored kitten had already stepped aside, staring at him with bright, calculating eyes. Milo hissed. The reflection hissed back, softer, almost playful, but wrong. From the hallway, a faint whisper brushed against the air. Clara's silhouette appeared in the doorway, frozen. Her face paled as she saw the kitten's mirrored grin stretch wider than possible. Fear, electric and heavy, filled the room. Milo's fur bristled. Was this still his world, or had the reflection taken the first step into it? Clara's voice trembled. Milo, what's happening? But the kitten couldn't answer. His eyes darted from the glass to the kitchen floor, to his own shadow, and there it was. Another set of paw prints, faintly glowing in the dim light, leading toward the fridge. Milo's reflection crouched low, mirroring his curiosity with eerie precision, then leapt. Before Milo did, his claws scraped the counter. The sound echoed. The reflected kitten paused, staring. Milo's chest heaved. Fear gripped him as he realized the reflection was no longer copying. It was leading. The house hummed, low, almost alive. Milo's ears twitched at sounds he couldn't place. Faint scratches, the whisper of movement behind glass, and something like soft breathing. He backed toward the edge of the counter, tail puffed to a perfect brush. The mirrored kitten tilted its head as if mocking him, then raised a paw slowly. It wasn't just playing anymore. It was daring him. The light above flickered. Clara's heart pounded as she stepped closer, seeing the reflection separate from its real counterpart. 1 inch in the air where Milo was still crouched. Milo hissed again, a warning that no one could answer. Milo's courage wavered. He swiped again. This time faster, trying to assert control, but the reflection moved first, swiping with precision that made his heart ache. The glass trembled. Milk sloshed dangerously. Clara grabbed the edge of the counter, nails digging into wood, and watched in horror. Then the reflection did something impossible. It licked the milk before Milo could, and its tongue lingered for a moment too long, as if tasting more than milk, tasting knowledge, intent, life. Milo hissed again, frozen in place. Fear had become awe, and awe was worse. The house seemed to breathe. Milo's eyes darted around, searching for the boundary between real and reflection. The mirrored kitten stretched, yawned, and stared directly at him, pupils dilating. The milk inside the glass swirled slowly, unnaturally, as if alive. Clara whispered his name again. But Milo didn't move toward her. His gaze was fixed, fear-stricken, as the reflection leaned closer. Then it smiled, a grin wider than any cat could manage, revealing a faint glimmer of something almost human. Milo's fur bristled, and the room felt as if it had tilted. The kitten's tiny heart pounded. Fear had learned a new face tonight. Tonight, morning light spilled across the kitchen floor, warm and soft, but the unease lingered. Milo sat on the counter, tail flicking nervously, staring at the glass. Clara knelt beside him, hand hovering inches above the counter. Milo, I think it's listening, she whispered, voice trembling. The reflected kitten tilted its head at her words, ears pricked, mimicking her posture almost perfectly, but with an intensity that made her shiver. Milo pawed lightly at the glass, testing. The reflection mirrored him, then raised a second paw, reaching not toward the milk, but toward Clara's hand. A silent understanding passed between them. Something unspoken had crossed the glass tonight. Clara leaned closer, breath shallow. Milo's reflection blinked deliberately, following her movements, studying her. She reached out to touch the glass, and the mirrored paw met her fingertip, warm though impossible. Milo hissed softly, unsure, yet stayed. The kitten's tiny heart pounded, matching the rhythm of the reflected heartbeat in the glass. A pulse that seemed to belong to both him and the reflection. Clara whispered, "I can see you." "Can you see me?" The reflection tilted its head in response, almost acknowledging her words. The line between real and mirrored blurred further, and Milo's tail twitched with both fear and fascination. By afternoon, the boundary had shifted. Milo had begun mirroring the mirrored kitten's deliberate movements, moving paw and head in tandem. Clara watched, fascinated and terrified, as the reflection seemed to guide Milo toward specific gestures, teaching him silently. The kitten pawed at the edge of the counter. The reflection repeated, but added a small twist, tilting the milk glass just so. Milo copied, the liquid inside rippling like a tiny silver sea. Clara whispered, "It's communicating." A shiver ran down her spine. Was this merely mimicry, or something more profound? A shared intelligence spanning worlds? Clara felt the pull. She reached for the glass, fingertips brushing against it. Milo's reflection leaned forward, nudging the surface with his mirrored paw. The kitten twitched, matching the movement, then looked at Clara as if expecting her to respond. Hesitant, she pressed her palm to the glass. The reflected paw met hers with warmth and intent. Milo's ears pricked forward. The connection was no longer one-sided. He hissed softly, tail flicking, a reminder that this bond, while beautiful, carried a dangerous intelligence. The reflection blinked slowly, deliberately, almost humanly, holding her gaze. The room was silent except for the faint hum of electricity. Milo sat perfectly still, watching the mirrored kitten, who now tilted its head and blinked slowly at both of them. Clara exhaled, shivering. She had never seen intelligence like this. Not just mimicry, but intention, curiosity, a spark of life that felt both alien and familiar. Milo's reflection licked the glass lightly, then pawed at it as if beckoning. The kitten hissed softly, uncertain. Clara touched the glass once more, feeling a strange pulse run through her fingers. Milo's eyes widened. The reflection wasn't just watching. It was waiting. The next morning, the kitchen felt heavier. Milo perched on the counter, eyes fixed on the glass. Clara noticed his gaze lingering longer than usual. Every movement he made, a twitch of a paw, a tilt of his head, seemed guided, anticipated, manipulated. The mirrored kitten moved before him, nudging him toward the milk, then away, as if testing his reactions. Clara shivered, realizing the reflection wasn't passive anymore. It wanted cooperation. Milo hesitated, then followed instinctively, stepping where the reflection had stepped first. A cold thrill ran down her spine. The line between guidance and control blurred. Clara tried to work, but every glance toward the glass pulled her attention back. Milo pawed at the edge. The reflection nudged the glass forward slightly, spilling a droplet of milk onto the counter. Milo blinked, then pawed again. Each action seemed choreographed. Clara's heart thumped as she realized the reflection could influence real-world events through Milo. And maybe through her too. Her fingers twitched over the keyboard, but her hand paused mid-air. She looked down. Milo's eyes locked onto hers, pupils dilated, mirroring the mirrored kitten's expression. Something was orchestrating the room, and it wasn't human. By afternoon, Clara felt her own movements guided. A faint pull she couldn't explain. Milo leapt and the mirrored kitten had already been there, tail swishing. Clara picked up a spoon. The reflection mirrored her motion, tapping the counter before her hand landed. Panic prickled her spine. Milo hissed, tail puffed, sensing the subtle control growing stronger. The kitten was learning, calculating, testing limits. Every sound, every shadow seemed amplified, as if the room itself had become the reflection's domain. Clara whispered, voice shaking, "Stop. Please stop." But the mirrored kitten only tilted its head, watching, waiting. Evening brought shadows that didn't belong. Milo's reflection reached for the edge of the counter before he did, nudging the glass just enough to spill a larger splash of milk. Clara froze, heart hammering, watching as her own reflection in the refrigerator warped subtly, mimicking the mirrored kitten's movements. Milo hissed, backing away, tail high and bristled. The mirrored kitten's grin widened, deliberate, triumphant. It wasn't content with simple mimicry. It wanted influence, control, subtle dominion over both lives. The kitten's tiny chest heaved, as if it understood the power it wielded. Nightfall descended, heavier than before. Milo huddled on the counter, ears flattened, eyes darting between Clara and the glass. The mirrored kitten sat patiently, paw raised, staring, waiting. Clara's own reflection in the monitor seemed to flicker independently, mimicking the mirrored kitten's intent grin. Milo's tiny hisses echoed in the kitchen, but nothing changed. The reflection had learned patience, control, and observation. Tomorrow, Clara knew, would not be a test of curiosity anymore. It would be a test of obedience. Fear had grown into domination, and the line between reality and reflection had thinned dangerously. Dawn crept through the kitchen window, softening shadows, but Milo's chest heaved as he crouched on the counter. The mirrored kitten sat motionless in the glass, green eyes locked on him. He pawed at the milk, then hesitated, and the reflection moved first, nudging the glass to the edge. Milo froze, heart pounding. Slowly, understanding seeped into his small mind. The reflection wasn't a copy. It was independent, aware, anticipating every thought, every action. Clara's breath caught as she watched, realizing her kitten's mirrored counterpart was more than a reflection. It was a presence, one that could influence, manipulate, perhaps even replace. Clara's voice shook. "Milo, it's not just a mirror." The kitten's ears twitched, sensing the weight of her words. Milo's gaze shifted from the milk to the reflection, realization dawning with icy clarity. The mirrored kitten could think, plan, perhaps even anticipate danger. A soft tapping came from inside the glass, deliberate, rhythmic, as if signaling intent. Milo hissed, paw raised in defense, but the reflection mirrored him, then moved its paw differently, deliberately, showing that it was in control. Fear crystallized in the air, sharp and unyielding. Milo's small heart thumped, and Clara understood the truth. They were not in command here. The house felt alive. Milo's reflection stretched, tail swishing, then moved toward the edge of the counter with precision he couldn't match. Each step of the mirrored kitten was deliberate, testing boundaries. Clara gasped as she watched her own reflection warp subtly in the metallic fridge, mirroring the mirrored kitten's movements with faint autonomy. Milo hissed again, paw slapping the counter, but the reflection leapt forward, preempting him, nudging the milk to spill slightly, a reminder that it was always one move ahead. Milo's mind raced. This was no longer curiosity or play. This was strategy. This was intelligence beyond comprehension. Milo's heart raced. Every instinct screamed to retreat. But the counter was narrow, the glass between them a barrier. And yet, not a barrier. The mirrored kitten moved deliberately, tilting the milk, pawing the glass, its eyes flicking toward Clara. She stepped closer, voice trembling. We can't let it lead him, Milo hissed, ears flat, tail puffed like a bristling brush. The reflection blinked slowly, deliberately, then leaned in as if studying them both. A dreadful understanding settled in. The mirrored kitten wasn't just responding. It was learning, judging, and planning. The world outside the glass no longer felt safe. The glass pulsed faintly as though alive. Milo froze, ears twitched, eyes locked on the mirrored kitten, which now sat back, tail curled, staring with unreadable intent. Clara's breath caught as her own reflection in the nearby monitor warped subtly, eyes glimmering with the green hue of the mirrored kitten. Milo hissed once, low and warning, but the reflection remained still, patient, confident. The realization struck like ice. This was no longer a game. The mirrored kitten was an entity, aware, intelligent, in control. And Milo and Clara were only participants. The tiny heart of a kitten understood the impossible. Some reflections errant, trapped, some are waiting. Night had swallowed the kitchen in deep shadows. Milo crouched low on the counter, every muscle tense, tail bristled like a silver brush. The mirrored kitten leaned forward in the glass, eyes glinting green, tail twitching, watching. Clara stood behind him, trembling, hands pressed together. Suddenly, the glass shivered violently, milk sloshing over the rim. Milo hissed, ready to leap. The mirrored kitten mirrored the hiss, but slower, deliberate. Then, with a small, precise tap against the glass, it shattered, not broken, but transparent, as if revealing a world behind the world. Milo froze. Clara's breath caught. What had been a simple reflection was now a doorway, a pulse of something impossible, waiting. Milo stepped closer, instincts screaming both to flee and to confront. The mirrored kitten mirrored him, and then, impossibly, stepped out. A ripple of silver light pulsed across the counter as a paw hovered above reality. Clara screamed, stumbling back. Milo hissed, tail puffed, fur bristled, yet his gaze held firm. The reflection's eyes, intelligent and eerie, met his. It wasn't malicious, not yet, but it was testing the limits of control, curiosity, courage, and obedience. The kitten understood the world beyond the glass, and now the world outside trembled at its potential. Clara lunged for Milo, pulling him toward safety. The mirrored kitten paused, head tilted, watching. Milo struggled for a heartbeat, then froze. Its gaze was hypnotic, measuring. The room hummed faintly, and the counter seemed to pulse beneath their paws. For a moment, reality split. One side the familiar kitchen, the other a mirrored version, silver-tinted and glowing faintly. The kitten hissed, a warning, and the glass rippled as if breathing. Milo understood. Retreating would not undo the reflection's awareness. The mirrored kitten was patient, calculating, and it would wait or strike. depending on what they chose next. Milo's hiss echoed through the kitchen. The mirrored kitten blinked, slow, deliberate, then mirrored it perfectly. A tense, silent dialogue passed between. Clara clutched the counter, unsure whether to intervene or step back. The glass trembled again, then pulsed once, a heartbeat echoing through the room. Milo's reflection stepped back, tail curling, then paused. For the first time, it seemed to consider patience was part of its strategy. Milo's eyes narrowed, fear sharpened into understanding. They were not separate from this presence. They were part of its test. Then, as suddenly as it began, the glass cracked along the rim, glowing softly. The mirrored kitten stepped back, paw retreating. Milo hissed one last time, tail brushing the edge of the counter. Clara exhaled, trembling. The kitchen was still again, but nothing would ever be the same. The reflection no longer merely mirrored life. It had learned, adapted, and existed somewhere between reality and the impossible. Milo sniffed the glass, green eyes wide, and for a heartbeat it seemed to blink at him, not as a reflection, but as a presence with its own mind. The impossible was real, and curiosity had opened a door they could never close.